Good morning. Welcome to the Science of Mind here at CSLDallas. I'm Dr. Petra, and we're really happy to be together again this Sunday morning. We are in this very meaty chapter called Our Relationship with the Infinite, and we are walking through this very meaty subsection called Spirit, Soul, and Body. And as a reminder, this is an opportunity for us to recognize that when we look at our teaching symbol with spirit, soul, and body, and the V of the creative process, that describes both the universal and the individual. It's the same map. It's a map of the infinite reality. And since we are made in the image and likeness of that, it's a map of the individual reality. Excuse me. It's getting better. My cough is getting better, but here it is again. So we spent a lot of time. I'm going to get a cough drop. I'm prepared. We spent a lot of time on spirit, the spirit of man as the conscious reality. Okay, sorry, you're just going to have to wait. I accept all treatment for perfect healing. I've been doing a lot myself. And ready for this to be over. Okay. So we talked about spirit. Now he has these two little paragraphs at the bottom of 113. We should neither separate spirit from matter, physical form from that which gives form, nor life from being. To suppose that one must retire from the world to be spiritual is one of the greatest possible mistakes. This is directly opposed to the self-evident truth that spirit enjoys itself only in its own works, which is its self-manifestation. We enter into the spirit of life only as we enter into the spirit of living. I will tell you, this is probably singly my most favorite thing about the science of mind. We are neither a Western tradition in the sense of feeling like we are always focused on the hereafter, someplace beyond this that we have to earn, nor are we like an Eastern tradition in that this is all an illusion, it's not real, it doesn't matter, and what we're looking to is to become pure spirit. Now, we already are spirit. We are already spirit, individualized, but spirit is the absolute, intangible, infinite reality that is causal, and therefore it has no form. But form is required for expression. And so all form, we call it the manifest body of God. It is the way spirit enjoys itself, expresses itself. And there's infinite variety in that expression because it's an infinite life that is being expressed. And I love this idea that it is to enjoy itself, right? So this world is not sinful, it's not bad, it's not wrong, it just is. It's just creation expressing life. There can be no real enjoyment of life until we see that everything is animated by spirit. And as we see that things are thus animated, we are beholding the real universe, which is the intangible expressing itself in the tangible, period. And so they're one and the same. And I think we talked about this the other day with the idea of the coin, two sides of the same thing, right? You can't actually have one without the other, which is why in the science of mind we don't say in the beginning. We only say every creative act has a beginning, but it's always eternally going on. Spirit and body, spirit and form, intention, impulse, love, and expression are two sides of the same coin. The essence of reality is invisible, but the substance of the invisible is seen and heard, and it is part of the everyday life of all. Right? So this is, when we talked about this, I think the other day, this E equals mc squared, right? And so it's all about relativity, and it's the relationship of movement to matter. And since we know all of life is actually vibration, go all the way to the quantum field, it's actually waves of vibration that then enter into physicality, right? Those two things are constantly in play. They're constantly going on. And that vibration is the substance from which everything is made. As that field winks into particularization, right? It becomes the atoms, the molecules, the something out of which everything is made. And so this is here to be enjoyed. And in that sense, you'll notice that there's nothing about learning lessons. There's nothing about suffering. There's nothing about any of that stuff, right? And it is it is about the expression and the experience of all of this. So that's the most fundamental thing about body. And the physical form is therefore never a cause, it's always an effect. It's always the outpicturing of something. And then we get to look at it and ask ourselves, what is it outpicturing? What is going on that it is outpicturing? So this ongoing cough that I've had, I've been sick. I was sick for about 6 weeks. And this ongoing cough is something that has reappeared in my life over and over and over again. They call it speaker's cough because I speak for a living. But for the very first time, when I finally went to the doctor again, and we had, what shall I say? We had ruled out all the other things that I've already been tested for and have taken medication for, and I've been really good about taking care of myself and resting and taking time off and all those things that normally it's about, right? It's usually my body saying, okay, it's time to rest. So I've done all those things, and here it is. And so the doctor said to me, he said, oh, you might have chronic postnasal drip. And I went, oh my God, my father had that. So somewhere in my consciousness is lodged something that believes that my body has inherited something from my dad. Well, you may remember the stories I've told about my mother's arthritis, which I have not inherited, because I've done a lot of specific work about not inheriting it. And so what a revelation. And we're going to talk about this here when we move into subjective mind, that there are these patterns in consciousness, right? And we call them race consciousness, which means human race, the collective unconscious. There's consciousness in a culture, subconscious patterns in a family, and in our own particular lives. We're going to talk about that. So I've had this thing going on since my 20s, where I would get this cough that would be almost unable to be handled. And so this week, I'm this old, this week, that pattern has been revealed. So now I can work with it not only on the physical level, doing the things that the doctor wants me to do to help clear this all up, but I can now also do it on the subconscious level. There's no requirement for me to inherit anything. My body is whole, perfect, and complete. Do you see? And in that way, I keep the physical experience from being a cause. Well, we inherit things from our parents. I guess that's just the way it is. No, that's making a physical thing a cause as opposed to an effect. It's the effect of me just simply unconsciously, subconsciously, right, taking on a way of being in the world that I observed and experienced from my dad. And I remember quite a number of times of him coming home and being, here's this diagnosis again. Now I have to do this. Now I have to do that. Of course, my father never did any of the things that he was supposed to do. And he just railed against how stupid the doctors were. So, right? So it never got any better. So he had it his whole entire adult life. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to have this new piece of information. Because now the work can be done directly on the false belief. And again, not a belief that I chose, not a belief that I even thought, but one that I absorbed. That this is how people are. This is, right? And this is the same thing when, deeply spiritual people get cancer or they get some form of illness. Nobody goes around, very few people, I do know some, but there are very few people who go around thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get this, or oh my God, I don't want to get that, right? But it's lodged in the consciousness that we are in, that the milieu in which our consciousness rests. So that's what we're going to go on to next. We find that on the subjective or soul side, individuals are subconscious. But subconscious does not mean unconscious. Okay, so let's just stop right there. Remember, over and over and over again, that Ernest Holmes does not use soul in any way that you have ever heard it used before. So you cannot equate soul in science of mind with any way that you've ever. It's not the soul that I learned in Catholicism, the little white amorphous thing that had all the little black dots on it that were all my sins, that was eventually going to either go to heaven or not, right? It has nothing to do with a certain way of being in the world, being soulful, has nothing to do with poetry or music or any of those kinds of things. We use the term spirit to mean our deepest self. What often people call my soul, we use the term spirit. Ernest Holmes uses the term soul to describe or to give a name to the subjective side of life. Okay. And so then we don't use the word subconscious, because subconscious implies that it is not aware. Subconscious merely means subjective to conscious thought. So the subconscious or the subjective mind is subject to the impress of our conscious thought, but it's also the place where we absorb and hold what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious, the consciousness of the race, of the humanity. So this is one of the few places he uses the term karmic law. Karmic law because it is the use we are making of universal subjectivity. Ooh, man, we're going to have to unpack that in just a minute. Karma means the law of cause and effect. That's it. Doesn't mean fate, doesn't mean destiny, doesn't mean unavoidable consequences. We understand the law of karma to really mean the law of cause and effect, which means that for every effect, there is a cause. And if you change the cause, the effect must change. So in this universal subjectivity, so what should we unpack there, right? Universal, meaning that it's part of the one mind, it's part of the universal reality that is subject to the impress of movement of consciousness. That which we talked about when we talked about spirit, the intention, the impulse of life, the impress of the movement in consciousness on the universal, towards more life. With us, towards anything that we make a movement in consciousness for. Okay, so There's so much here to unpack. We'll just talk about one more sentence here. So soul, which is universal subjectivity, which is also the subjective mind, all these words mean the same. They're all pointing to the same functionality or operation within the infinite. The way the one becomes the many. The way impulse, idea, intention becomes form. So universal subjectivity is not a place, it's not a thing, it's a process. Yeah. Even though we're going to talk about it, right? So, all right. Soul contains the memory because it is the receptacle for the seeds of our thought. And because it is the seat of memory, it contains our inherited tendencies. It also contains the race suggestion, human race, the inherited tendencies or beliefs of humanity, for we are not dealing with a separated or isolated subjective mind, but with the one subjective mind. If we were all dealing with isolated subjective minds, of course we wouldn't be engaged with what's going on with this idea of the collective unconscious. We wouldn't have access to it, and it would not impact us. But we know full well that it does. It does impact us, right? How many of the beliefs that we've grown up with are ones that we grew up by osmosis in our family? Our parents might never had to have said, life is hard, but we can observe how they think about life, how they talk about life, how they behave towards life, and our subjectivity is the receptacle, and it lodges. And if we were to give words to a belief that may not actually have words at all, we would say, oh, my parents believed life was hard, and I see that I do the same. Do you see? Doesn't necessarily come in as somebody saying something to us, but it's the milieu in which we're in, right? Which is, of course, part of the whole issues about racism and sexism and othering and all of that. It's all over time lodged in the milieu in which we are absorbing. We're the receptacle. And of course, if you think about developmentally, children, up until the time they're 7, they're living in the theta brainwave. And the theta brainwave has no filter. They just receive. They're just receiving, which is why they can learn 2 and 3 and 4 languages, but it's also why children absorb. They are the receptacle of whatever's going on around them. And we all do this. That's how we learn. That's how we learn how to walk and how to talk and how to behave and how to do things, because we are simply absorbing it from the milieu around us. And so this idea that if it's all one, this is all this one mind. So Carl Jung called it the collective unconscious. Rupert Sheldrake calls it the morphogenetic field. That every species actually has its own field in this subjectivity that we're all a part of, and that we're all influenced by, unless or until a conscious choice, a conscious thought, a conscious intention begins to be implanted, right? Where is it being implanted? It's being implanted into subjectivity, into the universal subjectivity, into the law of cause and effect, so that a new effect can be created, so that there is more enjoyment, because this is about enjoyment. Are you enjoying your life? Good for you. Yes, right? Okay, we treat the soul as being that part of our mental being which is subject to the conscious mind. From the viewpoint of the individual soul, it is an effect and not a cause, right? Because it's It's that which is impressing onto it that is the cause. The universal subjectivity is simply receiving what is being impressed upon it. And he says, of course, this is exactly what's ancient wisdom, as above, so below, psychology, metaphysics, is really supporting this. So one of the amazing things about New Thought is that the person who's considered the father of New Thought, especially in the United States, Phineas Parkhurst Quimby, in the early mid 1800s, he was influenced by Anton Mesmer and mesmerism and hypnotism, right? That was a big, big, big deal. And what did mesmerism and hypnotism reveal? But it revealed the fact that under certain circumstances, a person's conscious ideas, consciousness could be set aside. And in that state, the subconscious state, or what we call the subjective state, is revealed to be subject to the impress of the person saying to that person, now you're really strong, you can pick up this car. Now bark like a dog. Now jump higher than you've ever jumped before, right? And what in this process was revealed, that there is these two aspects to mind. And dovetailing perfectly with the teachings of Jesus, ask believing you have received. But ask believing you have already received, and you will receive, right? Believing you have already received means plant it in your subjectivity until it's real. And when it's real here, it becomes real out in form. Why? Because you have planted it in the law of cause and effect. The subjective mind has received that impress and has said, oh, okay, that's how it is. And therefore, the effect must manifest itself. That's what the law of cause and effect means. And so this was a startling revelation. Huge revelation. And of course, Anton Mesmer was in France, and so that sparked a lot of the New Thought work that was done in Europe. We get a lot of that from Thomas Troward and his writings in the early 1900s. And so we follow that through from Quimby through Mary Baker Eddy and Emma Curtis Hopkins into the New Thought movement, into the science of mind and unity and divine science and all of the other places in which New Thought is taught. And so the ancients had an understanding of this intuitively, right? And then psychology began to really parse it out. And now there's more and more and more of that understanding. So let's stop there. Ooh, man. We're going to unpack a lot in universal subjectivity and the subjective mind. We're going to unpack a lot. There's a lot of things that are going on in this place between thought and thing, between impulse, movement and consciousness, and outpicturing. There's a lot going on in this little thing that Ernest Holmes has decided to identify as soul. So, Ryan, we're turning to you. We're turning to you guys online, to you in here. Comments, thoughts, what is interesting and or confusing about this?
Well, good morning to you too, Dr. Petra, and hello to everybody here in the room and online all over the world. We're so glad that you're with us today. And as Dr. Petra mentioned, this is an engaging conversation, so we'd love to hear from you. For the folks that I'm raising my hand to, as you can see it, we have our fabulous Richard back.
Yay, welcome back, Richard.
So you will be on camera if you raise your hand, just FYI. The folks over here to my left, you won't be seen on camera. The folks who are online, you'll never be seen on camera, but we'd love to hear from you too. And so the people who are in Zoom, you can do so by hitting the raise your hand icon located down below under the reactions. And the folks who are on Facebook Live, I see We have some fabulous people looking at us from the Caribbean
I
island.
love that. Yay.
Nevis, yes.
Welcome.
Love to see you out there. So make sure to drop where you're watching us from today, and also any questions or comments that you might have as well. I do see our usual in-person guest, but now is online, so he's taking it a step ahead. So I'll go ahead and pull
Sure.
up Ross.
Yay.
Ross, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Where are you, Ross? We're used to you sitting right here.
This is Ross, and here's really the question. There seems to be an intention for us to enjoy being here.
Yes.
We know that we have this enormous capacity to enjoy our lives. Does that imply some intention of spirit?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I believe that, and the science of mind absolutely believes yes, because think about it: infinite love, peace, beauty, joy, expressing itself. How else could it express itself but as something that is love and beauty and joy? And what is there not to enjoy about that? The act of expression itself means, well, just think about it. Think about any time that you've been stifled in a box, felt like you couldn't be yourself, felt like you couldn't do what your soul or your spirit was saying to do, right? That feels conflicting, confining, stuck, trapped. But for spirit, the act of creation has no boundaries. And so that pure sense of creation can only show up as things and expressions that are a reflection of itself. How else can we see ourselves but in our very lives? And so, yes, when we talk about the impersonalness of the universe, we're talking about the impersonalness of the law of cause and effect. You put forward a cause. The law of cause and effect does not say, wait, that's not a good idea. All right, it can only say yes. But we absolutely understand that there is a trajectory for life, which is to express itself in its fullness. And that seems to imply that, yes, this is the sandbox. And it is for the enjoyment of life. I mean, even think about, I just was watching this morning. I was sitting out on our balcony. It was a little bit cooler. The rain had just stopped, and I was watching the baby birds are being brought to the feeder to feed. And they're a little unhappy about that. They really want mom and dad to keep feeding them, right? And I was watching this one little baby finch, and the mom would bring the finch, the little baby, down to the, not a baby anymore, right? They're virtually fully grown, down to the feeder. And they flutter their wings and they do cheep, 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 cheep. That's how you know it's the baby. They're fluttering their wings because that's how they get the parent to feed them. And so and you can see this process. And the mom is bringing it down and then flying away, hoping that the baby will eat from the feeder. And then the baby is following and following. And every time the mom moves somewhere, the baby is following. And you can see how enormously patient she is. She brings the baby back to the feeder. And the baby hangs on the side of the feeder going, cheep, 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 feed me, feed me. What am I supposed to be doing here? And she's like, you're supposed to be doing this. Watch, watch, watch. Okay. And then she flies away. And then the little baby's like, oh. And then the little baby's flying afterwards. And ultimately, she feeds the baby one time. And then she brings the baby back to the feeder. And it's this beautiful, patient, I mean, what else can you say, right? It's love being expressed. She never scolds the baby. She never pokes at the baby. She never, I mean, it is really extraordinary. And that's where we can see all these revelations. This is what it means to say, I look at nature and see spirit revealed, right? Where did we read that? I can't see it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We just read it, and I can't find the exact sentence. But when we look out and we see in a form, we see spirit, we see the animated spirit showing itself back to us. So it's a great question. And I think this, to me, is one of the many things that I love about the science of mind. We've transcended this idea that we're fundamentally flawed or broken. No. What's flawed or broken are the false beliefs that we have absorbed from the consciousness of humanity, the consciousness of our cultures, the consciousness of our families, right? And some of that is from our biology. We had to learn how to survive. Our biology was designed first for survival. And all of this had to grow and become revealed as the brain developed, from the reptilian system to the limbic system to the prefrontal cortex to all of the executive functions. All of that was necessary for consciousness to be able to be revealed. So yes, we are here to enjoy ourselves. And enjoyment, as we have learned, right, our choices teach us about enjoyment. I can remember when my son, he got $1 for his allowance. And every time he got his $1, he was 6 years old, we had to go down to the Kroger and he wanted to buy a little toy from the aisle, the toy aisle. And we did this week after week after week. And I would say to him, "Are you sure?" "Yes." And I remember the day that he said to me, no, Mom, don't give me the $1. He said, "I'm just going to go," and he's 6. "I'm just going to go down to Kroger and I'm going to buy something and it's going to break." Aha. I said, "So what do you want to do?" He said, "I want you to keep my $1 until I can buy something that won't break." That is the education of our choices. Do you see? That's all that's happening. The learning, the lessons that we're learning is the education of our choices. I can race after promotion. I can race after, wealth. I can race after prestige. And if I do it in a way that claws me over everybody else, I'm going to get to the top of the heap. And as has been shown in all the studies, right, the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies are some of the most depressed people in the world. Because the choice of what actually fulfills us has not been learned. So yes, of course, to be prosperous, financially free, but to make sure that what we're doing is also giving and contributing and fulfilling, right? That's why with addictions, you always need a little more and a little more and a little more, because we're trying to fill ourselves up from the outside. Do you see? The whole point of the learning is the education of our choices, because we are free to make choices. All right, got some comments here in the room.
Hi, my name is Glenda. And there's some ways that there's this way that I have started to grasp subconscious, conscious mind, and how that can operate in my life. And one of the ways that helped me think about that is when I think about, for instance, if I walked into this room at 6 o'clock in the morning and there are no lights on, then I'm going to look for a light switch and I'm going to hit the switch and expect for lights to be on. And what I'm thinking is that the conscious part is the part that has the intent to see light in the room.
Yes.
The subconscious part is the expectation that I can have it. There's this understanding that if I hit the switch, there will be light. And if light doesn't come on, it's not that I stopped believing there should be light. I think that must be something out of whack.
Yes. Yes.
I still have the expectation
Yes.
that there will be light. That's my subconscious part of me that has this understanding. That to me is the praying with knowing that I already have it.
Correct. It's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And if the lights don't go on, it's not the dark fighting back.
Right.
Correct. Because I will have light.
Yes.
I'm going to go find someone. I'm going to call someone. I'm going to, whatever I can do,
Right.
I'm going to first fiddle with it myself to see if I can do something about it.
Right.
And if I don't know how to fix it, I'm still believing light is going to be in this room.
Yes.
And I'm going to go and find the person that I know can put the thing back in alignment that will, with the circuitry or whatever it is, with the wiring, so that the natural law of electricity, of light, will bring light into this room ultimately.
Beautiful. I love that, Glenda. Thank you so much. And it's a great analogy because if we were to overlay onto the circuitry our synaptic systems in our brain, right, and the ways in which our thought patterns are likely to go, we can see that something is out of whack. Something is out of alignment. There's prosperity in the room. There's prosperity in life. I expect prosperity. I work for prosperity. Wait, why isn't it here? Or I get a little prosperity and all of a sudden I have a bill and I have to pay it all because obviously there's something out of whack in the circuitry, in the belief systems which are housed in those synaptic systems. And when we do our affirmations and our spiritual mind treatment and our vision boarding and our expectations and our meditation, all of that is designed to realign our circuitry so that it flows from cause to effect without anything getting in the way. It's a brilliant analogy. This is why the metaphors and analogies are so important, right? Because we can play with them and begin to understand what we're doing. Of course, we recognize that any analogy that's used from the physical world is going to break down. It's not going to cover everything because we're talking about an intangible, infinite reality, but it can get us a long way. Beautiful. All right, we have a comment here in the room. Do we have something out there?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring this question in real quick.
Okay.
It asks, is there a difference in practice between the definite work one does to attract or manifest something or spiritual work does to correct an inherent or absorb belief or tendency? You want me to read that again?
No, well, you can. Yes,
Okay.
Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Is there a difference in practice between the definite work one does to attract or manifest something or spiritual work one does to correct an inherent absorb belief or tendency?
I would not separate them that way. One isn't spiritual and the other definite. We can use definite work for outer manifestation and for the internal expression and the internal changing of inherited beliefs and tendencies. We can use definite work for that. Definite work is a declarative work where we recognize that we are absolutely directing the law to an outcome. So I have used it to get my cute little BMW convertible that I had a while back, which I then traded in for my little Nissan Leaf, which I love. And I have done it for definite work when I have been working on changing something that's lodged in my consciousness. So I remember having this false belief that I was always overlooked. And I had lots of evidence that that was the case when I was first in a spiritual community in Seattle. And so my definite work is I pick me. I don't need to wait for somebody else to pick me. I pick me, and truthfully, Spirit has picked me or I wouldn't be here. Oh, Spirit has picked me. Wow, Spirit has picked me to be this individualized expression. Well, if Spirit has picked me, then surely I can pick me. I pick me. I pick me. And I did that for 6 months. Definite spiritual work. until then I started getting picked for so many things I had to start saying no. Right? So definite work can be done for both. And Ernest Holmes talks about mental treatment and spiritual treatment. Mental treatment is this definite work where we know we're using the law, we're deliberately engaging in the creative process, because we know there's something that is in the way and we are carving our way through it, or we are simply attracting the specific thing we want. And it's okay to want something specific. Then he talks about spiritual treatment, which is a realization of that which is already true. So we can do healing work, physical healing work. We can create amazing outer expressions, businesses that thrive by realizing the presence of a spiritual truth, abundance or wholeness or peace, right? And we are so deeply realizing it that it becomes the place from which that outpicturing must move. It becomes the seed from which that outpicturing must move. And again, that realization in the spiritual treatment, what tends to be slightly different is it's often less form specific. It's the realization that however abundance is going to show up in my life, however peace is going to show up in my life, I may be sort of aiming it at an area, let's say peace in my family, or peace in a relationship at work, or peace in the world, or peace in right? But I'm not being definite in that I'm not so worried about the form, what it's going to look like at the end. I just know the quality will be peace, right? And so that's the spiritual work. That's the realization when there's nothing within me that says, well, but peace isn't possible, or who do you think you are that you can have that, blah, 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 right? Then we have to go back to our definite rewriting of the patterns. And so they both work. They're both valuable. They're both necessary. Sometimes if I'm working with something in specific, so just thinking about all this work that we've been doing with our right sizing of our campus, right? I've used both kinds of spiritual work, depending on where I'm at, depending on how form specific the outcome is that I want to have. And so they're basically toolkit. They're basically tools in our toolkit. And everything doesn't need a flathead screwdriver. Sometimes it needs a Phillips head. Sometimes it needs a hammer. Sometimes it needs pliers, right? So we want to have lots of things in our toolkit so that we can dance with them as we are moving in the game of life. What am I expressing? What am I creating? How specific do I want it to be? There's nothing that says it can't be as specific as you want it to be. And sometimes we don't require specificity. It's the quality that we're looking for. And then it shows up how it shows up, which is also very fun. Can be very fun. So these are great questions. Okay, so we're running out of time. We still have a few pages in this section, actually, to go. We've got a few more. This is so chocked full because now we're really starting to want to apply it. What does this mean to us? Not just this universal reality that we've been talking about, but what does it mean to us? And it means that spirit, soul, and body is the truth of us. It's the truth of our being. It's the truth of who we are and how we show up in the world. And the more that we can reconstruct our image of life and of ourselves, the more in alignment with the way that it works we are, and the less kink there is in the hose, right? The less kink there is in the process. All right, good stuff. So we have a wonderful workshop coming up in the first week in August with Paula Holland, if you want to be on the right track. I know that that's coming up. And I don't know what else there might be that's coming up that we're talking about.
Yeah, law of mental equivalence. Is
Oh,
gonna be coming up.
yes. The Law of Mental Equivalence with Christine Volkmer. That is a brilliant class. It's all about this sort of creating the space in consciousness, which is where our work starts, so that we can be confident that the outcome is assured. It's brilliant. It's brilliant work. All right, we'll see you at the celebration. We'll see you when we see you. Bye for now.